it's a team game, right? As a team, you're trying to find players that help your team win. Um, a player that makes their team great is better than a great player. So you're factoring all these different things. Who's going to show up when it's crunch time, when the chips are down. Who's going to put the team before themselves. Who's going to add to the culture. That leads to winning teams. So the teams that have it figured out, they're looking for these players and trying to add as many as they can.
That was Seattle Thunderbirds head coach Matt Odette, and you are listening to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolin. Just watch me now. Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there, and welcome back to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolin, or welcome to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podolin. If you happen to be a first-time listener, we love new listeners, so welcome with open arms. Hope you enjoy the conversation you're about to hear with Matt Odette, who is the head coach of the Seattle Thunderbirds and has been for the last 12 seasons. That's right, 12 seasons. In a sport where it seems like the coaching carousel rarely lasts over 2-3 years, Matt has managed to be a head coach in the Western Hockey League for 12 seasons. So he's obviously doing something right. And it was great to reconnect with him, actually. And why I say reconnect is because we were both draft picks of the Florida Panthers in 1994. Matt was a 7th round pick. And so we attended a few training camps together and got to know each other a bit there. We weren't, fast friends or anything, but definitely remember Matt, and Matt remembers me, and it was great to be able to connect with him on this podcast after all this time. Matt's had a ton of success there in Seattle since he's been there. They won a championship after losing in the finals. They lost in the finals in 21-22, and then in 22-23, they won the championship in the Western Hockey League, ended up making to the Memorial Cup. And didn't end up being able to raise the crown, but that was in Kamloops. That was some really good hockey being played there. Dylan Gunther was on that team, and amongst some other real big studs. And they had a wagon that year. And Matt talks about those teams and how tight they were and how that matters when it comes to success, whether it be individual success or team success. The culture of the group is really important. And we cover a lot. We cover the development path. We cover, the draft and how to identify 14, 15-year-olds, what it means actually where you're drafted, what kind of runway how does that change for the player. We talk about birthdays, late and early. We talk about, advisors. We talk about team culture and intangibles around individuals that maybe he looks for or sees and will give somebody an advantage over making a team. We talk about the current landscape of the WHL, which has changed dramatically, major junior hockey in general, with the NCAA rule changes, and this is the first full season where these changes have been in effect. So we talk about how the league looks right now, the landscape of the league, what he sees it doing moving forward. And some really interesting takeaways. Even with the 20-year-olds in the WHL this year, which for the first time in a long time, some teams don't have 3 20-year-olds. So we talk about that and the impact there and what that might look like going forward. Lots of great stuff. Very eloquent Matt was. I asked him some pretty pointed questions that he handled great. Put him on the spot with a couple things. He's an honest guy. He's a straightforward guy. He's a straight shooter. He knows what he likes, and I thought he did a great job in this interview. So it was awesome to reconnect with Matt. Obviously, you don't have to be from Western Canada or the Western United States to be able to appreciate a conversation with a head coach at a major junior level, as obviously the things we're talking about apply across the globe. So without further ado, I will bring you my just over an hour conversation with Matt Odette, the head coach of the Seattle Thunderbirds. Enjoy. All right, here we are. Welcome to the Up My Hockey podcast, Matt Odette.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here. Great to see you again.
Yeah, man, it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a while.
Yeah, Florida Panthers back in the day, 94 draft.
Yeah, 94 draft. So like I'm sure I mentioned it in the intro, but Matt was, I believe, seventh rounder. Did I get that right? Seventh rounder,
First
94.
overall in the seventh.
um, but Matt was a late birthday. So even though you were a huge dude, you were a late birthday. So you were actually 75 born and you're in with that 76 group. I have two sons myself that are going to be part of that if they ever get that far, to sort of experience what maybe some would call that benefit for the first time ever in your hockey life, to have it be a benefit. I don't know, kind of random place to start, but maybe we'll start there because that's a developmental thing that has come up a few times on this podcast. You as a player growing up, did the late birthday affect you, help you, hurt you, support you? Do you think it had any impact at all?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it a ton. But I think with some of our late birthdays, I think you're maybe a little bit behind physically. I think you have to rely on your hockey sense and some of your smarts a little bit more until your body catches up. So maybe I did benefit from that. Didn't wasn't the guy that developed ahead of everybody else. I was a late bloomer physically. So I think maybe that forced me to, you know, develop the hockey IQ side a little bit more. And, maybe that helped me develop. And once my body caught up, I could, catch up and maybe pass some other guys. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think that can happen. I think we've all seen in the hockey world the guys that, mature faster than others. And then they kind of plateau and other guys pass them. So I think in those situations, the guys that are late bloomers can sometimes, improve in other areas. And when their body catches up, can maybe pass some of those other guys.
Yeah, 100%. Well, you're a big dude. Like, so you said you grew late though?
I did. I think I was tall, but I wasn't filled out. I wasn't, physically mature. It took me, I think I was later hitting puberty and getting some of the physical strength. I think I was, when I got drafted, I was a $170 probably. Really hit a developmental spurt when, going into my 19-year-old season, I came back at 205. So I gained 35 pounds in the off season. So that was my big jump, from 18 to 19. But, I think even in my 20-year-old year in junior, trying to grow a playoff beard, I had like two whiskers, on my chin, and other guys have full beard. So I was a little bit later with some of the physical development.
Right. Yeah, because to your point, like the late birthday, I never really thought of it, to be honest, at all. Right. I was a February birthday. And that when you're growing up and you're 7, 8, 9, you're not thinking about that. You're just thinking that you're in your grade and you're in your league and that's where you're supposed to be. But then getting into what I've been getting into, which is, development and player development and, high performance and all that stuff. And sometimes working with younger players, I started thinking, especially, and then again with my kids. So like my youngest is a November 29th birthday. And he was playing up a league like for almost all of his minor hockey. And I started thinking like, my God, like at 9 years old, like if everyone else would just pause right now and he would get 11 more months of whatever, and then like press start again. Like I was just like, wow, like that would be astronomically different for him, you know? And so I was just like, that was where I started thinking, like, it's one thing if you're like ahead of the curve and you're a late birthday, but if you're like a little bit behind, and if you're a little bit behind physically, sometimes it's tough to be at the party to begin with. You know what I mean? And especially with the youth of the, like where the WHL draft is at that 14 years old, it's like a lot of guys haven't even gone through puberty yet, and they're not even in the league really to be watched to get drafted, And that's where I think it's like a little bit crazy, is like, my God, they're not at the party, but they might be really good players.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to scout, and or having the draft age where it is. You see a lot of our scouts, they're looking at the parents. How big are the parents? And we see it with our guys. 3-4 months is an eternity at this age group. When guys leave us at the end of the season and then they come back in August for training camp, sometimes you don't even recognize these guys. They've developed so much physically. So, even when kids are even younger, that's amplified when they're only 9, 10 years old. 4, 5, 6 months is a lot of time. So you don't think about that until, you have some kids in those situations. But, that's why in junior hockey, if you have a young team, it can be difficult. If you're playing against teams that have an average age of, over a year older than you, it can be very tough. So age, even at our level is really, it's a big factor in team success and of course the individual player success.
Yeah. You mentioned that with the scouts, and I mean, since we're talking about it, maybe we should chat about it. Like I mentioned it on the pod before, but I did geek out on the draft a few years in a row, actually, just to see when guys were taken and, the percentages. And I read, Outliers and some of these books by Malcolm Gladwell that were, talking about the age correlation to even to players that play at high levels. And it was interesting because the quadrants of the year, right? First 3 months, second 3 months, third quarter, fourth quarter, there was equal representation, like how you would maybe suspect. The 25% of the draft was from the second quarter, 25% of the draft was from the third quarter, but the fourth quarter was completely underrepresented. Like 10% of the draft was from players born October, November, December. And all of that percentage difference was shifted to the first quarter of the year, right? So, extrapolate whatever you want from that. But like for me, it's like there's no way that there's better hockey players born in the first quarter, right? There has to be just as many good hockey players that are born later, but the physical differences at that age allows them not to be seen or maybe not to be of blossom. So I was like, boy, like you have to be, in my head, I was like, as a scout, I would be very, very aware of the birth date, especially for the WHL draft. Because again, 11 months makes a hell of a lot of difference, and whether that's a late round selection or not, or even somebody you put down to the bottom of your list to go watch next year, he's probably not going to get drafted, but this guy can play. It's just kind of wild, because it's a handicap. I don't know how else to put it, right? It's a handicap unless you're at the party, and it's unfortunate. And that's where a lot of the kids kind of go away. And I guess my message to the kids that like, don't go away. If you love the game, if you can see the game, like if you're enjoying it, like don't go away, like stay at it. It's a long road. And somebody that knows what they're doing is going to find you at some point.
Yeah, 100%. We're lucky to have really good scouts here. And you're right, with how much guys can change from year to year, you got to continue to keep eyes on all the players. Guys pop at different times. So you can find some gems in the later rounds, undrafted players, list players. We've had tons of success, uncovering some of those late round picks and some guys that got passed over in the draft. So really important that you have a thorough scouting staff, and we're really lucky. And, we've hit home runs with some guys that got overlooked, maybe, a couple of years passed by before they got their opportunity. And, everybody develops at different times. So, back to the NHL draft, if I wasn't a late birthday, if I was in the previous draft, I wouldn't even be considered. I wasn't even playing junior hockey at the time. I played half a season as a 17-year-old. I was up and down with junior A, and I wouldn't even have had an opportunity to be drafted because I wasn't there yet. So makes a big difference. And that's why the best scouts are who they are. They don't write off players that may have been overlooked in a draft, or maybe not have been drafted as high as other guys. And I like the way scouting is changing at the NHL level. Back in our day, if you didn't get drafted in your initial your first year of eligibility, it was unheard of to get drafted second, third time around. But now, this happens all the time. We've had guys drafted, their second year of eligibility, third year of eligibility, drafted as 19-year-olds to the NHL. So, that mindset's shifting, that, guys aren't written off, and guys can, hit their stride at different ages and get their opportunity.
Yeah, man, that's so young to try and figure out if you're going to be a pro or not, as it goes. And I mean, obviously the top guys are the top guys, but after that, I mean, there's so much more that goes into it, as you know, other than just, your skill set, right? I mean, what are these guys doing away from the rink? And that's when, you give a guy 2-3 years that has a better work ethic, that has a better attention to detail, that, cares about these details that coaches keep emphasizing, and all of a sudden, it's now tangible, right? It's visual. You can see it, you can feel it. They're making more of an impact, and those are the guys you want in an organization long term. Anyways, I'm sure that's what you're looking for, especially when they land on your camp for training camp. I mean, you probably don't have eyes on them during the season, but now when you're watching these younger guys come in, I'm sure that's one of the things you're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously the skills pop, but you're looking at the hockey IQ, the character, away from the rink. We put a big premium on those things. Obviously skating, but that's even hard to, kind of see how it's going to be with guys hitting growth spurts and stuff. So it's hard to put a final judgment on a kid skating, but the character, the hockey IQ, those are things that we really value. And, the other things, can come around and can at times take more time. So, those building blocks, those foundational pieces, that can project a guy to be a good player because he has that character, has that work ethic, can put in the time to bring his other skills up to speed. So we put a really big premium on those attributes for sure.
Yeah. Well, and especially if it's like, if you could ever define like a dead heat, like if there's like two guys, that are close or similar, and if you look at the character and those intangibles that I know that I value a ton, like to me, the guy with the better intangibles is going to be the better player at the end of the day. Right. Like if even if he's a little bit underneath, right, like dead heat, even a little bit under, it's like this guy's going to improve just because of his approach, just because of the way his will, his engine, like all these things that are going to push his skill set higher, to oppose to somebody that, you're visually seeing maybe a few red flags about, commitment, discipline, whatever those things are. And I don't know. I just like bringing that up because for anyone listening to this podcast, especially the younger players, like you only think about what happens on the ice. And that's it. I mean, are you getting your cookies, or are you getting your breakouts, or are you shutting down somebody? And they think that's the end of it. But it's like, it's so much more than that. And the quicker that these guys believe that in themselves, like the quicker it helps their development. I mean, plain and simple. And the quicker it is for them to make teams that they want to make.
Yeah. And it's a team game, right? As a team, you're trying to find players that help your team win. A player that makes their team great is better than a great player. So you're factoring all these different things. Who's going to show up when it's crunch time, when the chips are down, who's going to put the team before themselves, who's going to add to the culture, that leads to winning teams. So, the teams that have it figured out, they're looking for these players and trying to add as many as they can.
This break in the action is brought to you by Iron Ghost Construction, platinum sponsor of the UMH 68 and friend of the Up My Hockey podcast. Iron Ghost has provided player scholarships at all 4 UMH 68 events, helping young athletes chase their dreams on and off the ice. Iron Ghost is where quality and safety lead every build. Since 2014, Iron Ghost has delivered quality, safe construction from structure to mechanics, start to finish. Iron Ghost, solid, skilled, and proven. A proud supporter of youth sports in their hometown of Vernon, BC, and beyond, Iron Ghost is committed to building more than just structures. They are building futures. Big fan of Iron Ghost Construction and the McKechnies. Here in Vernon, they have been a part of the Vernon Viper organization. They have been a part of youth sports here, whether it be lacrosse or Vernon minor hockey, the spring programs, my spring program, the UMH Compete, and also in the Western Canadian event of the UMH 68, which is coming to potentially a state near you. So stay tuned for that. The UMH 68, Iron Ghost has been an awesome sponsor of them. So we want to support what they're doing here in the oil fields, in forestry, in the mines. They build structures. If you need them, they will do it for you. And I hope that this word of what they're doing and how they're supporting gets out there, and you can support Iron Ghost Construction as they supported the young athletes here in Western Canada. Okay, there's a bit of mania around any draft, and of course in Western Canada, there's a bit of mania around the Bantam draft. I do think it's a year too early. I think it's driving kids out of their homes too early, and everything else that happens with that early draft. But my question to you is, and I'm going to be fairly candid with this, like first, second, third, fourth, seventh rounder, like how much does that label a guy, and how does that affect his status on the pecking order coming in to actually make your team?
Well, I mean, in the perfect world, everyone's got the equal opportunity. It's what you did previous got you here, and what you do from here on out will keep you here. But I'd be lying to say that higher picks don't get more of a runway, more rope to work with. That's just the way it is. But we've had several success stories of guys, 8th round pick, Reed Schaefer making the team and becoming an NHL draft pick. Nico Majadovic's another one. He was a 6th round pick. We had a guy by the name of Jared Davidson was a list player who made the team as an invite as a 16-year-old, which is very rare. So we earn your place is kind of one of our core beliefs, and we do live by that. If a guy shows up and earns his spot, he's going to get the opportunity and the chance to play. So we try to live by that as much as we can. But yes, of course, the guys that you're investing high picks in, they're going to get more of a look, of course, more of an opportunity. But if you barge your way in as a later round pick or a guy that's undrafted, you will get the opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. How maybe tell the story of that? Like how did that? Because I appreciate your honesty. I mean, the same thing in the NHL, we see it all the time, right? A first round, like you invest time, effort. In the NHL's case, lots of money, right? Like this guy, this first rounder needs to play. Like they really want him to play. So there's going to be a lot more opportunity for failure and a second chance, third chance with those guys. I think it's a little bit to a lesser extent than WHL from what I've seen, but they're still there. I mean, usually the first, second rounder is kind of the guy that serves a 16-year-old, for the most part, obviously, unless they fall flat in their face. And then other than that, you're kind of scrapping a little bit, right? Like a 5th rounder is trying to get ahead of a 4th rounder, a 3rd rounder is trying to get ahead of that 2nd rounder. But how would a kid who's listed come in, beat all the picks that you had? Well, maybe not all of them. Maybe there was more than one 16-year-old there. But like, how did he make so much of an impact to be able to say, you know what, we need to have this guy here?
Well, some of the things that we talked about, was just consistently the hardest working guy. Every time we were on the ice, you could see that he had some hockey IQ, really showed some smarts. And when you're up close with him working in practice, you could see that, very coachable, grasped things really quickly, applied the things that the coaches were telling him. And, at this age group, you're trying to project what a kid could be. So you've got those intangibles in place, and he had a raw skill set, but there was something there. But he had all the kind of the foundational things that you want that can lead to being a good player. I myself was an 11th round OHL pick. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I showed up to training camp not knowing that I wasn't supposed to make the team. Pretty naive. Our 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks made it, and then I made it as an 11th rounder. So, I guess I have a soft spot for those guys that really, barge their way in and make an impression and, give themselves a chance to make the team. So, we're looking for those attributes that can help a team win. It's not always the flashiest guys. Of course we're looking for talent and skill for sure, but sometimes you see something in a kid and you can project him to be, a future culture carrier, a future leader for your team. And, those type of guys are good to have because they not only help you win, but they rub off on the other guys and kind of pull the rest of the guys into the fight, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that. And even getting back to your point, like it's more of a culture discussion, but I think if you don't have a meritocracy based team, like if that isn't a foundational piece, like I think it kind of breaks down, like you have to be able to allow mobility and like for guys to actually see it, like, holy shit, like this guy's coming, this guy got minutes, this guy made the team, right? Like if that never happens, I think it changes it, so I think that's awesome. And obviously you can't do it every year because I'm sure there's not that guy there every year, but when the guy shows up, I think it's probably something that you smile about because it's like, hey, this is something that we can endorse and we can encourage and promote.
Yeah, for sure. It just, one of our, the whole earn your place concept. I mean, we fight it at our level where guys think it's their turn, right? I'm 18, it's my turn to play more. It's my turn to be on the power play, or it's my turn to be wearing a letter. We try to set the example that it's nobody's turn. You can be 16 and play on the first line. You can, be on the power play at a young age. It's, just because you're 19, if you're not doing the things that you need to do, it doesn't mean you're going to be on the power play or you're going to wear a letter. So I think when you see situations where you can walk the walk, I guess, so to speak, where guys do earn something that, on paper, they're maybe not slated for, it helps solidify that and kind of backs up your message. So, but it is something that we fight with, guys show up comfortable because they're 18 or 19. It's like, okay, it's my year this year. I'm going to get my power play time. I'm going to get, I'm wearing a letter this year. And, that's not what we want. We want guys to earn their everything that they get, and guys coming in that are young or undrafted or late draft picks, they can earn these things as well. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, I do too. I agree. Talk about yours. So you're from 11th rounder to making the team. Like let's go through that. What was your mindset? How did you approach it, and why was it successful?
Well, I think naive. I was naive. I was used to growing up, trying out 120 kids for the AAA team. I'm from Oshawa, so you grind out through those tryouts. And as a kid, some years I made the AAA team. Some years I didn't. I made it both years in Pee Wee, and then got cut both years in Bantam, and then made the team one in midget again, and ended up getting drafted to the OHL. So I just was naive going into training camp and just tried to make the team like I would any other year. From there, it was a blur. Next thing you know, I'm in a billet house and I'm at a new school, and I'm like, what the heck just happened? It happened fast, but I think just being naive and going there to make the team like I would any other year. And it's changing now, right? There's not as many tryouts to play on some of these youth teams, with the sports schools and stuff. So that can be foreign to guys coming to this level. It's just, hey, I show up and I play, I've made the team, and they don't know what it feels like to compete for a spot and, compete for being in the lineup and being on the team. It's foreign to kids nowadays.
Yeah.
So that makes it tough as coaches to, to send that message. Hey, some nights you're not going to be in the lineup. That's a concept that kids have trouble grasping, partially because I think they haven't been in tryout situations that often growing up. So for me, yeah, just not knowing what I don't know, and just being naive and just showing up and doing the best I can, and it happened to work out.
Right. I like that about your story though, that like not playing AAA for both years of Bantam. I mean, that would be a calamity for some families here that would think that, it's all over, yet here you go, still end up in the OHL, end up being an NHL draft pick. Was there, was it a natural development progression, or was there something about you in those Bantam years that allowed you to step from Bantam into midget AAA? Did you take a different approach, or do you remember that time at all?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think, well, when I was younger, I was a forward and I was a pretty skilled guy, put up some points. And then I hit my growth spurt. And then they put me on the back end. So I was all of a sudden a defenseman. So there was a position change there. And I think I took to it, I guess, with my size, and, there was a little bit of a shift there. I became a skilled smaller forward to a big defensive, I guess, mobile for a size defenseman. And then, I guess maybe not having expectations, and just having to grind it out. And I had the same approach going into the midget tryout, say I'm going to do the best I can and see what happens. And, it's a good lesson in, all it takes is one guy to like you. So
100%.
one of the coaches for the midget team, Gilly Hughes was his name, liked me, like what I brought to the tryouts, and I made the team. So, you might not be, every coach's flavor, depending on the tryout, but, all it takes is one guy to give you the shot, and it can change everything.
Yeah, couldn't be more true, right? Like that's crazy. You've seen it, and you see it happen at the pro level too. Like passed over, moved, traded. Somebody all of a sudden likes them. Somebody gives them an opportunity he never had before. It's a good environment. All of a sudden, this guy's a player, and everyone's like, "Well, why wasn't he a player before?" Well, he fucking was a player before. You know what I mean? Like that's some of it too, right? Like some of these guys are players, but they just don't. They're not seen, or they're not given the opportunity, or somebody doesn't like them for some reason, and then they get planted in the right spot, and it's like, holy smokes, now here he goes. So that's awesome. I love you saying that, because sometimes it can be super dejecting, right? You're in your own little hometown. It's the same head coach every year. He's a guy that for whatever reason doesn't like you, like it's just, there's other guys, you know what I mean? Like once you get out of that small little pond, the bigger pond, provided that you provide value in some capacity, somebody's going to see it at some point, so it just takes one.
Yeah, it just goes to your point that you made earlier. Just keep grinding, keep
Yeah.
pounding the stone. Timing is everything. You're not out of it until you quit. So if you keep going, you get the right set of eyes on you, and then, you're off and running. So it's just
Yeah.
having that resiliency, having that attitude and drive to keep going. That's half the battle.
It's totally half the battle. What do you say with tryouts? Just going back to that, because I found I started going to the odd one here in the last 3 years. Once my son got drafted and I kind of got back into the thing, I went to a couple of WHL camps. I hadn't been to one since my last one, like to give you the time warp, right? So we're talking 30-year difference. So and to say the least, it didn't look like a tryout in 1994. That I remember. So to your point, like these guys aren't really trying out. A lot of these guys are committed at young ages to teams, right? They never really have to put themselves in a position. So I do feel like I'll echo that. I agree that like that the idea of what a tryout is a little bit foreign, and what maybe the makeup is. But I've also found that like the the storyline around it seems to be a little different, even from like an organizational side. Like it seems like there is maybe less real opportunity for guys to step in. It seems a little bit less competitive to me, in general. Can you speak to that? Like maybe I'm off base, maybe I'm not, but like how do you feel about, like, have you seen it change in a while, and if so, why?
I think a little bit, and really recently, I think, there's some recruiting elements that are going into, getting some guys to camp. So with that comes some promises and, some assurances and stuff like that. So that can affect I think the tryout idea. We try not to do that. When we're recruiting players and getting them to come here. The message is, hey, we'll give you all the opportunity in the world, and it's up to you to take advantage of it and make the team. So I think in the recruiting world, it's starting to change a little bit because players won't even show up if they don't have certain assurances and guarantees, and whether it's ice time, spot in the lineup. So that makes it tricky. But the world's changing, the landscape's changing. There's more of a recruiting element to our league now. So it makes it tricky, but we're trying to hold on to our values, the best that we can, and give the opportunity. We promise the opportunity, and then it's up to the player from there.
Do you allow fighting in your camps?
I wouldn't say we allow it. If something happens naturally, then then it happens. We don't come out and say, hey, no fighting, or but
it's neither
we
don't.
It's
not like you say no.
Yeah,
it's not like you say
we don't.
It.
And we certainly don't encourage it. That's for sure. Right. If you're competing hard and something happens naturally on the ice, then fine. We don't want our guys squaring off or doing anything like that. That's not what our training camp's about. We want natural competition to happen.
Yeah, that's the best way, and that's really the way it should have been right off the bat. That was just like for me watching some of them, like, not that it was a no-hitter, but like even like the corner battles, net front battles, like that kind of stuff just seemed really like not there. And of course, if that's not there, there's not going to be any type of fighting at all. Not that I'm running to camp to watch a bunch of fights, but it was just there's some times where it's like, man, it seems like there should be a little more fire in this environment, for me watching. And as a head coach, I think I'd be losing my mind in some scenarios. As a dad, it's one thing, right? But like if I was blowing the whistle, I'd be like, come on, boy.
Yeah, we go through it every year. Like, I feel like I got to go down and tell our veteran players, returning players, hey, let's pick it up here. We're trying to earn our place. Nothing's guaranteed, and remember that it's a core value, and you're a returning player that's supposed to set the example. So every now and then we got to deliver that message in training camp to our returning players to, hey, let's pick things up and start competing out here.
This episode is powered by BioSteel, main sponsor of the UMH68 and friend of the Up My Hockey podcast. BioSteel is the hydration choice trusted by pros and parents alike. And now it's even easier to grab. The new BioSteel Variety Pack is available at Costco, Canada. You get 24 bottles, 3 flavors, Rainbow Twist, Blue Raspberry, and Black Cherry. All with no sugar, no caffeine, and no junk. Just clean, effective hydration that works as hard as you do. Now, I don't know if BioSteel is available at Costco in the U.S., but if you are in Canada, by all means, go out and grab some. And if you aren't getting it at Costco in the States, you can definitely get BioSteel at biosteel.com or biosteel.ca. They do have ongoing programs there, and as an affiliate of them, I definitely use their product. We use it all the time here at the house. They've been great to work with as far as from a promotional standpoint, supporting the UMH 68, and why not support somebody that supports youth hockey in that capacity? I think it's a great option. Hydration is important, and BioSteel does their part. So go out there and grab your BioSteel today. How does the league feel this year? Like, any different with guys leaving, new guys coming in? How do you feel the climate is?
Well, I think there's a lot of unknown still. I think going into the season, with the players, some players moving out, some players moving in, there's some parity in you don't know how good everyone's going to be. You don't know the quality of the teams, right away until kind of the dust settles. So, still a lot of gray areas, still a lot of, feeling things out. I think the league's, pretty skilled. It's a touch younger for sure. We're missing some of the 19-year-olds and the 20-year-old crop is not as strong. But the youth and the talent, I mean, I think that's at an all-time high in our league. And, it's pretty exciting to see some of these young players excelling. And, I think we're getting the best, the best crop of younger players, in North America, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and so I guess what we're talking about for those who are maybe living under a rock in the hockey world is that this NCAA Division One has opened up to major junior players, which was not eligible to Odie and I back in our day. We had to make our choice at 15, 16, however old we were. That once we played that game and put that sweater on, we essentially said no to any type of scholarship or any opportunity to play NCAA. And last year they opened up the opportunity for guys that are playing major junior to go back down there and play NCAA. So there's been a big exodus of some of the top players and, the Gavin McKennas of the world and so on and so forth that have made this jump. But in doing that, I think what Odie's referring to here is that like the U.S. players that previously essentially only had one route and they were all told that they had to go play U.S. hockey and go play NCAA can now play Western Hockey League. So now like you're getting the entire Western geographic area there that is now a draw, and guys are saying yes more than they ever have. So I mean that's quite a big additional talent pool now for your league.
Yeah, it is. Really exciting in that regard. I think the rule in general is positive. I think for older players, 19, 20-year-olds, now that they have the opportunity to go NCAA, it extends their path. It extends their runway, of playing high level, serious hockey. So I think that's a really big positive for the players. For the younger guys, it becomes more of a debate. It can be sensitive when some of the younger guys leave that have eligibility, but every guy's path is different. That's, when we're recruiting guys, and it's been like this, forever for us, it's, we believe in our program, we believe it's a good destination, but every player is different and every player's path is different. So for some players, the NCAA path is a good one. And for some, the WHL path is a good one. So we believe in our product and what we have to offer. And I think in a sense that message hasn't changed. The other path is good and so is ours. So, ultimately a positive for, some of the older players to get more opportunity, and a positive for our league to get some of those American players and some of those, college bound players to come to our league. And now we're getting the most exciting, most talented players in that age group all coming to one place. So that part is really, really exciting.
Yeah, that's great. And it's so new too. Like that's the other thing. Like you said, like some of these top 19-year-olds, some of the 20s are not available because they've gone. Obviously excited about whatever they're getting into, but the college, the NCAA is generally quite old, and even to go there as a 19-year-old is young. And who knows what these guys are getting into. So I know when you're talking there about believing in your program, you're also speaking about retention of 18, 19-year-olds. Like, do you want to stay here? Like, what's the rush in going NCAA when you have another year left here, and you might be going there and being a 15th forward and, not even really playing very much, which I think is going to be interesting, because I know if I was a player, I'd be watching, right? Like, what are these guys doing? Like, what programs are they going to? How much ice are they getting? Are they actually in the lineup? Because that's a big decision, as like, do you leave your junior team that's kind of brought you in and brought you up and developed you, and then jump out at 19 and maybe be in a situation that it's not quite what it seemed, as we've all seen that before. So I am interested to see how everyone does this year. I think it's going to flush itself out in the end. Guys are going to be making different decisions, but there will be a vetting process, I guess, for lack of a better word, about how it all works out.
Yeah, and that's the gray area that everyone's kind of waiting to see how it unfolds. The next couple of years, will kind of tell the story on how it plays out for some of these guys that did go over. And like you said, it is an older league. It is very difficult. And I think some of the team success that some of these teams have recruiting some of these high-end younger players will be a factor, as well. How good is Penn State going to do? How good is, Michigan State going to do? North Dakota with some of these younger players, versus some of these other programs that have older players. So,
Right.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. The younger players, it's the guys that get drafted really high, they have to make a decision whether they want to sign with their NHL team or explore that other path. And obviously there's pros and cons to every situation. And yeah, it's obviously interesting times for our league and our level. And I think over the next couple of years, there'll be some clarity, and there'll be some more of a clear path on how it's all going to shake out.
Do you think the WHL is ever going to, like, they're not going to be able to compete with the NIL? I don't think, at least, you know what I mean? Like some of these top guys, like I heard Kevin McCann, whatever, he got 700,000. I think that's a year. Like that's freaking crazy. Not everybody's getting that, obviously, by making the jump. But like I've heard the WHL is fairly archaic, and like I remember making $60 as a 16-year-old every 2 weeks, and I heard that maybe it's like $150 now or something. Like, do you see that ever changing, or is there even room financially for that to change, where maybe guys you can be a little bit more in the same playing field, where these guys are actually getting more than just a half a tank of gas a month, to play?
Yeah, I mean, it's that's over my pay grade, but I we'll see how that shakes out.
Is that even discussed though? Like, is that even something that's on the table? I don't know who makes those decisions either.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
At the management and ownership levels, they're definitely talking about all the different scenarios and things that we can do to be more competitive, in different areas. But, an interesting, we have a player, Braden Coots, who, was heavily recruited to play college, and he decided to sign with his NHL team, and he was able to go to training camp and make the team at a training camp and play NHL games. So,
Wow.
The guys that are going to college don't have that opportunity to go to training camp and make the impression and potentially play games and start in the NHL. So there's that argument there.
What team's he with?
He was with Vancouver. He's since been sent back to us, but played 3 games and
preseason.
So we got NHL regular season.
Regular season.
Yeah, 18 years old.
What was the story? What was the story about that? Meaning, like, what was his experience? I'm sure you chatted with him. What were his takeaways?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, he loved it. Soaked everything in. He's an Edmonton kid. Got to play in Edmonton Saturday night, hockey night in Canada. Play against McDavid. So that's really cool experience, and he earned that. And he went in there and made an impression and surprised, and they gave him that opportunity because he went there and earned it. So without being in camp, without being able to, put his best foot forward, he wouldn't have had that experience. So, and there was a lot of talk of him being there longer, and pushing the envelope to stay there and potentially make the team for the season. So, there's a few guys that are in the same boat that, decided to sign with their NHL teams, and they're getting that NHL experience. And, some of them might stay for the season. Kindle is one that's in Pittsburgh at the moment, another positive story. So that's, one of the things that players have to consider, giving themselves a shot to go into training camp and make the team as an 18 or a 19-year-old. So, Braden went in there and, impressed the brass and earned his way onto the team to start the season. So, really excited as his coach and someone that's been part of his development to see him achieve his goals. And, that's the rewarding stuff at our level, is when you can 100%. See guys, earn that stuff and go in there and become NHL players. That was really cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. You mentioned the 20-year-olds, that it's not as deep. That was one thing I was talking with Matt Bardsley the other day with Spokane, and they only have 120 right now, which again, for those listening, like that's essentially unheard of. I mean, like the 320s are usually like real core guys. Obviously, they've been in the league a long time. They're more mature. They're culture setters. They're usually big pieces of the team. And to be sitting there with one, and and usually there's a fight, right? Like, because there's 4 or 5 at camp. You have to let a couple go. And it sounds like Spokane's not alone in that right now. Like there's quite a few teams that don't have 3. Do you see that just kind of being the trend, or are we waiting for the kind of the things to filter out and we'll have 20s, or what do you feel it is for the 20-year-olds, like the future of 20-year-olds in the WHL?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely, it's probably the biggest impact. 20-year-olds that are good, that are really good players are getting those NCAA opportunities and starting that path, instead of waiting one extra year. So, it's definitely lightened the caliber of our 20-year-olds. And, I don't know if that will change. But we've definitely seen that impact. And that's this decision guys have to make when they're at that age. Do I extend my runway one more year and play as a 20-year-old and then explore NCAA, or do I want to get it started, as a 20-year-old? So that's some of the decisions those guys are facing. And, we know it's really difficult for those guys, but, personally, maybe extending that runway and that pathway as long as you can, to me makes a lot of sense. But, we don't hold any ill will or anything like that. If a guy was, to decide to do that as a 20-year-old and get started with a new experience, then, we would support that player for sure.
Do you, like, if they do make that jump as a 20 and now they're in the NCAA system, they can't sign an NHL deal, correct, until they're either out of that system, like until they've finished their major, or until they're saying they're not going to play. Like they could announce that they're not going to go back, let's say, for their sophomore or junior season, and they want to turn pro. But when they make that announcement, now teams can talk to them. Do I got that right?
When they sign their NHL contract, they're
Well, I'm saying before, like, let's say a 20-year-old, right? So let's say a guy like Zach Funk, right? So he comes back for his 20-year-old year, scores 60, signs with Washington, right? Let's take him now in the current era. If he didn't have that 20-year-old year, didn't score 60 in the WHL, he chose to go to an NCAA program, and he has a good freshman year there, let's say. He isn't signing a deal that year, right? Like, no one can approach him while he's in that system, can they?
Well, yeah, they can. I believe they can, and he would just have to make the decision to, end his NCAA and turn pro. I think we see that quite often as guys will, play a season, and I'm not sure if they can do it during the season or in between seasons, but they can be signed and then, essentially they have to turn pro. But that's a debate right there. Zach Funk, if he has the big, 20-year-old season and does get that free agent contract, if he decided to play NCAA, would he have the same success? Would he
sign the contract? Exactly.
Would he have signed the contract? So that's just, an interesting scenario and just an individual case, right? Everybody's different, and, the path and what might work for somebody might not work for somebody else. So, it's interesting. There's tons of gray area, tons of debating, over this topic, and, lots of little, I think, rules that have to be sorted out. But, I think in the next couple of years, we're going to we'll see it settle in one direction or the other.
If you had your crystal ball, do you think the league stay a little younger and will be a little bit younger from a perspective, or do you think it'll get older or whatever? I mean, I've heard both sides of it, as far as from opinions are concerned, and no one knows. But if you were to guess, what would you say it does?
I think it will be a little bit younger, but not quite as young as it is currently. I think some of the guys that maybe don't have success going over at 18 or 19, might make the decision to stay, moving forward. So that might make make it not quite as young as what it could be. But I think in general, the league will be younger, but not drastically younger.
Yeah. Because successful teams, I mean, if we're going to be honest, there are usually 19-year-old teams, right? Just because of what we talked about this entire time, right? You 2, 3, every year you get older, you get stronger, you should be faster, you should be all these things. So you're kind of projecting, a guy at 14, 15 to be what's he going to be for you at 19, really, right? And the thing is with some of these guys leaving, now it's like who is filling these 19-year-old spots? And that's kind of where I think that you're saying is like without having as many 19s, you are going to be bringing probably higher skill level guys up younger, a little bit earlier. Maybe those guys are filling those spots. But historically, it's been successful championship teams have been 19-year-old teams for the most part.
Yeah, 100%. And it makes it really tricky to kind of plan out your path as a team. In the past, you could kind of map out your 4 years. You know what you're going to have, when guys get older. And now it's hard to look that far ahead. You don't know what your team's going to look like in 4 years. You have to kind of approach it in, 2-year chunks or even year to year. Teams that maybe have a window to maybe win a championship, you might see teams going for it a little bit earlier than they normally would. But yeah, it definitely makes it tricky to kind of map out, what you might be as a team down the road. And,
right.
Certainly has adjusted people's, approaches and strategy when it comes to, their championship windows.
Yeah. When you were mentioning earlier about tryouts and you're talking about, I don't know, lack of a better word, like promises or whatever, right? Like, or, some of these assurances that guys would come in on. One of the questions I get asked a lot is about representation and advisors and agents and their role. And do you need one? And, it seems like every kid that's 14 years old and older has an advisor these days. And, and for instance, like my son, who's an 09, drafted to Kamloops 4th round, he doesn't have one. I mean, I've had some conversations with their GM and, I know their director of hockey. So I feel a little bit comfortable in that scenario, but I'm still a dad in that environment. Right. And I guess from you though, from the horse's mouth, like, do they seem to be more needed and more necessary? Like, do you feel that this is something that a player should have coming in? Somebody should be kind of representing them, having these conversations with you to know where they stand or whatever an advisor would do? Like, can you maybe shed some light on that for everyone listening?
Well, it's hard to say. I think nowadays it's hard not to be the guy without one. I think there's definitely some, I think overall it's positive, and these guys can help you, help give you the proper advice, help take some things off your plate, in terms of dealing with, teams and management, maybe let the players and the families focus on, developing, themselves as a player and their child. Is it the end of the world if you don't have one? Absolutely not. They can be help. They can be a big help for sure, but I don't think it's the end all and be all. You can certainly get by, but they can have some benefits for sure.
Is there influence? Could you call influence? Let's even talk with the draft. Like, let's say player A is represented by so-and-so, player B is represented by so-and-so. Are they adjusting the draft at all in any capacity, do you think?
I don't think so. I think, think the good scouts are, and the teams that do things the right way are, putting the value in the player and what they're, what they are doing on the ice, what they can bring to a team, try to kind of block out the agent influences and pick the right player that's going to fit the team. Am I naive to think that some agents have more influence in hockey than others? Of course they do, but I think the teams that are doing things the right way, try to put merit in the actual player and what they can provide for your team and what kind of impact they can make. But yeah, that's definitely an interesting question, tricky question for sure.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I see it just like for me, just being a bystander, like I see and felt the influence in the NHL environment. Because, for instance, when I got traded to Toronto, Donnie Meehan had like almost half of the Maple Leafs. So now if I was a Donnie Meehan guy, there is leverage there for Donnie Meehan, right? And leverage with the GM. I mean, Matt Sundin's contract's coming up and, and they're going to have some negotiation. I'm sure there could be a discussion about, well, what about so and so? You know what I mean? Like, can we get him in the lineup? You know what I mean? Like those types of things I know are discussed, and I know that there is some leverage there, and they use leverage to help their players. But when I was thinking at the WHL level, like I couldn't really imagine a scenario where there's leverage, right? Like there could be influence because, like for instance, you may have a couple guys that you know really well and you trust them because you have history with them and you know that the players are represented. If he says to you, "Hey, this guy's a guy," like I know you're gonna like him. Like I can see that being influential in that way. But you're still going to have your own eyes and you're still your own draft picks and all the rest of that stuff. So I haven't really imagined a situation where that like influence to actually get something done and through a door or to take you as a second rounder instead of a fourth rounder. Like, I don't know. I can't imagine those scenarios other than the trust factor of, from a GM or from a coach to an advisor and just sort of getting a little bit inside knowledge on a player.
Yeah, I personally haven't seen that at our level. Of course, like you said, there's agents that, just the way it works out that we maybe deal with more than others. I think ultimately these guys are good people. I think the ones that aren't kind of get weeded out. But the really good agents, they're for the most part are really good people that, have the right interests in mind for their clients. And I think as a team, you do not, I mean, you tend to not want to deal with the ones that aren't on the up and up.
Yeah.
But yeah, at our level, I don't think we see too much of that. At least I haven't personally.
This episode is also brought to you by Elite Prospects. Elite Prospects is the gateway to hockey. Online since 1999, eliteprospects.com is the #1 statistical hockey resource, serving over 1 million unique visitors weekly. It offers the most informative hockey player database on the web and has the most reliable transaction tracker available. And specifically for youth hockey players, EP is your very own online showcase to highlight your achievements and help secure hockey future playing opportunities. Coaches, scouts, and schools at every level of the game consider Elite Prospects their one-stop shop to discover future stars. They do have their verified profiles. They do have their premium profiles. My boys have them. It's a very cool way to see who is following your page, to be able to include your accurate height and weight, where you're from, hometown, etc. Your personal profile picture. It's a great way to track your own statistics and for others to track what you are doing. As a bonus, as being a sponsor and I guess sponsor is the right word with the UMH 68. The people who play in my tournament get their tournament stats up and running on their player profile at Elite Prospects. So Elite Prospects has been fantastic to work with. They're definitely involved in the youth and amateur aspect of the game, and are really growing their roots there. So big fan of Elite Prospects and what they're doing. By all means, go out and see what they're up to, and get your profile verified, or get a premium profile from them as well. Are they become more of a face? Like, do you find players less willing to have the hard conversations, or to have any conversation, to maybe knock on your door? I don't know what type of policy you have, and or how you run your team, but with these guys getting agents so young, and a lot of times those phone calls come to you and not from the player, I assume. Well, maybe I shouldn't assume anything. Like, maybe talk about that environment, like the player coach environment. Now you have this agent in the middle. Like, how does that whole relationship work for you with how you like to run things?
Well, it's definitely different times for sure. Back in the day, it would be unheard of a parent or an agent calling calling the GM to talk about things. But it's a different time now, and Bill LaForge is our GM here, and he does an excellent job kind of handling those things. And kind of shielded me from hearing about some of that stuff. I think in general we've got really good parents, and you know, like I said, Bill does a good job handling the agent stuff when it does come up. But personally, I prefer the player handle their, we're at a serious level of hockey. These guys are 16 and 20 years old. I have a lot of respect for the guys that, come in and, want to talk about their situation, with the coach personally, one-on-one. And, instead of channeling it through their parents or through their agents, I think that's the right way to do it. We're trying to teach our guys how to be, quality young men and be able to talk about difficult situations. And, we want to have that open door policy, where guys can feel comfortable and come in and talk about their situation, talk about their ice time, talk about their opportunity. I feel like we have created that environment where, it is comfortable for a player to come in and do that. So I find that we don't have to deal with as much of the outside stuff. Our players are pretty good that way, in knowing that they can come in and chat with the coaches and get honest feedback on, where they're at and what they need to do to earn more.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've found that there's no way to officially test this, and I'm potentially biased, but it seems harder, and not that it's hard, because there's still a lot of kids out there that can have conversations with adults and are willing to look you in the eye and can ask questions, are insightful. But it seems like that is becoming a little bit more of a skill, and when somebody can do that, it catches my attention, and it's like, oh, this kid's whatever, a confident young man, I mean, he can sit there and have a conversation with an adult, and, he's not giving me one word answers. And again, I don't know if that's a product of, maybe I'm imagining it, or if it's a product of, the devices and on their phones and, head down and not really communicating amongst their social group as much anymore. But do you see that? And do you appreciate it when someone is able to be comfortable in a room with you?
Yeah, we do see that, and it really stands out when a kid has that, communication skills and the ability to interact with adults, and, firm handshake, looking somebody in the eye. And it's actually something that we teach. We have a habits meeting, and we hit some of these topics, try to teach these guys, how to try to develop the person, the 24-hour athlete. These are some of the things that, away from the on ice stuff, that, guys can improve on and be a more well-rounded person. So that's part of our curriculum, so to speak. These guys are going to be interacting with scouts and having scout meetings, and you have to be able to, make that good impression. And, we try to teach some of these life skills for our guys.
That's awesome. Good for you. Because I mean, and again, like for the players listening, and you're listening to two coaches right now, like it's a high performance habit that gives you more of an opportunity, because Odie and I are just dudes. We're just normal guys. And yeah, we want good hockey players, but like if there's something about you that is endearing, that makes me think about you, in a way that's like, yeah, this kid's got it together, right? Like now my focus is going to be a little bit more there. You know what I mean? And I just think it's not that you're trying to be contrived or inauthentic, but like if you can show up in that environment and it is recognized, like now you have the good favor. Now you have some positive energy. Like it can really be an advantage for you as an individual, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So like, don't underestimate it, guys out there. Like take pride in it, practice it, as Odie's saying, right? This is something that you can totally practice. That's the thing I believe with all my players. All this stuff can be learned if you want to learn it, right? You have to get a little uncomfortable doing it, but it is a big value add if you can do it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. When we draft players, the first time we get to meet them and interact with them is the development camp. And I remember it clear as day. I mean, we had a guy years ago named Tyrell Bauer, and we just recently drafted him in the second round. And, all the kids are showing up to camp, and he shows up, dress pants, golf shirt. All the other kids, are dressed in shorts and flip flops and stuff, which is fine. I mean, it's not, that's not too big of a deal, but he just stood out. And when he met all the staff, it was firm handshake, looking us in the eyes, Mr. Odette, yes, sir. Like, and that made an impression to us. And that's how he carried himself, on the ice. He was the first guy in the drills, doing everything right. And, we were, at the time we're saying to ourselves, like, this guy could be our future captain. And sure enough, he was. He's a big part of changing our culture, when it wasn't in a very good place. And that's the importance of drafting these type of players with that character. It can, be a cultural shift for our team. And, that first impression from Bowsy, I remember it clear as day, and that was so impactful for us.
That is wild. I mean, and take note, guys, listen out there, parents too, right? Like, it wasn't a toe drag and an end to end on the ice, right? That we're remembering here years later, right? It was an impression that was made off the ice just by being a stand up dude, right? That was confident and knew what he was getting into. And players, like, if you don't know your coach's names going to a camp, like, and in the history of them, you're stupid. I'm sorry. Like, that is absolutely stupid to not know first and last name, where they played. Like, invest in where you have been invested in. And, like, again, being authentic about that. Like, if I was going to Seattle's camp, I would know where Matt played. I would know who he played with. And you know what? It might come up in a conversation. I can ask a question and be authentically curious about where he was, what's going on. Like, that shows interest. That shows curiosity. That shows investment. Like, these guys that just show up and it's like, oh my God, you just don't get it. You guys, you don't get it. But the Mr. Odette with the handshake, that's something that you remembered. I love that. Speaking of your career, man, you played forever, like long pro career, successful pro career. What did you take away from your time as a player to shift as a coach? And maybe I'll even preface it just before that. While you were playing, did you know that you wanted to be a coach?
Yeah, I did. I think it was just a natural progression. You do something your whole life, and it's like we've been in school to be involved in hockey. It's something we've been training for, since we were little kids, and it just felt like a natural progression for me. As a player, one thing that I learned is, how much being a good teammate and a good person on the team, how far that can get you. My skills were deteriorating pretty quickly as I got older, but I really took a lot of pride in being a good leader, a good teammate, a good person in the community, and I think that extended my career. It kept me in places longer than maybe I would have been. Because as I got older, I wasn't a great player anymore. I don't know if I was ever a great player, but I wasn't as good anymore. So I had to bring all those intangibles, and that kind of extended my time as a hockey player. And I kept value. The coaches felt I was valuable to keep around despite my deteriorating play, and I took a lot of pride in that.
Awesome. So how do you incorporate that into what you're doing now?
Well, I think being a leader on a team and being a good character guy, it's what a coach does. It's just a little different of a dynamic, but you're still trying to set the right example, lead by example, be a high character guy, be a fair guy, hold guys accountable, all the different things that, being a captain of a team, or, wearing a letter for a team, or just an older player that's valued. These are the things that you're trying to do every day. And, it's very similar as a coach. Obviously there's a lot more to it, but, the same core values and the same, you got to be the same person. That's, yeah. I think that's advice to anyone trying to get into coaching is be yourself. Don't try to be someone else. Be the best version of yourself. That's what's gotten you this far in your hockey career. And you just got to shift those values over to being a coach.
Are you a dad? We never talked about that.
Yeah, I'm a stepdad. Yeah, I have two stepsons, 23 and 17. Yeah, I married my wife. My wife's from the Seattle area, so she has two kids. So I'm a stepdad now. So it's pretty
There you
cool.
go. Well, why I ask is because, like, for me, and after hockey, and you definitely learn a ton of stuff. From leadership and culture related stuff by being in a locker room. Uh, and then I got into business, and I was, in some C-level positions, like with, working with people and being a leader of people. But it didn't really hit me until I had kids that I was like, that I knew that I had to be the guy. Like, and it was like, okay, like, how am I aligning here? Like, are my belief systems something that is aligning with my actions? And, and I started thinking about all that alignment from like a foundation up, and am I really somebody that, I would want my boys to be like? And obviously we all have our, we all have our warts, and, I did my best to try, and I still have warts for sure. But like, having the kids was like a big thing for me. And then getting involved in hockey in the capacity that I am in now was that next layer of that. And I love you talking about that, because like, I think, being in the position that we're in, if you don't really fricking value it, and if it doesn't push you to be better, like, I don't know what you're doing. Because I think that's one of the biggest motivators, especially with the age group that we're working with. It's like, these guys need examples and they need leaders. And if we're talking about standards that we can't hold up to, then we're just full of shit anyways, right? So it's like trying to do your best every day to uphold those standards in some capacity, hopefully be a guy that they can look up to and lean on. I love that. I love that obligation. I think that's a great part of the job. It kind of makes me smile inside. And I thank the game for that too.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, really cool to hear that. Yeah, it's like hockey has taught us that, the adversity that you got to go through, the example that you have to set. And we try to pass that around on to our guys. We're mindful of that stuff. We're trying to develop guys to be better people and equipped to tackle the real world, whether it's in hockey, whether it's in other avenues in life, and to be good fathers one day. So that's all part of it. So that we're trying to develop good people, and guys that are able to be good hockey dads one day. That's really cool, and hopefully when they come back, and 20 years down the road, they bring their kids back, and can show them where they cut their teeth, and can show that off. So I think that's
Learn how
really
to be a
cool.
man,
That's
right? Learn
that's
how to be
why,
a
I
man.
mean, ultimately, that's why we're doing what we do, right? It's so
Yeah.
rewarding. And especially with this age group that we're working with, it's you see that the guys change right in front of your eyes, and it's super rewarding.
Yeah, I think the game's amazing to teach that stuff, why I'm so passionate about it is because you become a better hockey player the quicker you figure that out, and you become a winner the quicker you figure that out. So, like, being able to use this, I call it a vehicle, right? Like, hockey's a vehicle to hopefully learn how to become a great young man or a great young woman. There's a lot of great women that are playing this game. I just don't happen to be coaching any of them right now, but like, like, if that game can teach you those intangibles, what it takes to be successful as a group, what sacrifice means, what discipline means, what accountability means, the communication, the value of interpersonal skills, like all these things that for the average hockey parent doesn't think about that as being a hockey skill. Like, the higher levels you get, you said you had like extra years in your career because you were good at that. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much there for that. And the best part is, whether they go to NCAA, whether they sign an NHL deal, whatever, that will stay, right? That's better than power skating lessons. That's better than, your skills coach. So that's why I kind of love teaching the game from that angle as often as I can. There's obviously a time and a place for structure and forecheck and power play breakouts and everything else, but the more times you can hit those, the habits classes that you're talking about, like, I love you talking about that. I think there's more value there. I bet you those guys even understand. Like, that's awesome that you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. And those are the good parents, right? They're delivering the right message to their kids. It's not about, what can I get out of it? What's in it for me? Like, how can I get the most points? It's being part of something that's bigger than themselves, how to, give more yourself into something to achieve something as a team. like you said, the lessons that are learned are well beyond, can you toe drag, or can you, beat the goalie in a shootout? It's, so many different life skills that are taught, and the good parents are the ones that, try to echo the team first message that the coach is trying to deliver, add value to the team in different ways, support your teammates, being a good teammate, and, just be that high character person. The parents that are echoing that message and, thinking bigger picture are, I find those are the kids that are going to have the success in life.
Yeah. Yeah, and you look at the win. I mean, teams that win, people love winners. GMs love winners, uh, and whatever role you played on that team, like you have now won. You have learned what it takes to be a part of that, and I mean that's something that is invaluable too. And I think from a coaching standpoint, that's when you have to when we have to have that obligation to get that right, because there has to be trust involved. That a sense of selflessness actually serves you at the end of the day. And I'm here for you, right? Like I am here for your development. Yes, there are going to be sacrifices you're going to have to make for the greater good of the group in certain scenarios. But at the end of the day, I got your back and I care about you. And I think when those two things exist in a locker room, I think that's when you got something pretty special.
Yeah, that's a great point. We try to deliver the message, the team success is what leads to the individual success. Obviously NHL teams want winners, and the teams that care about each other the most have the most success. It brings 2022. We had a team that went to the finals,
You guys were a
and
wagon.
it was such a close knit team. In the playoffs, we faced elimination 6 times, and we're 6-0. And it's the guys cared about each other so much. The mindset was, one more day with the boys, one more week with the boys, and we just refused to be put away. Pretty remarkable. We were down 3-1 versus Portland and came back and won in 7 games on the road. We were down 3-2 versus Kamloops. Fought back and won game 7 on the road. Faced an elimination in the finals. Fought it off, in game 5. So 6-0 in elimination games. We finally lost out in the finals, but it was an example to me of, the care that guys had for each other. They didn't hesitate to tell each other that they loved each other. Like it was that close of a team. And I think that's what gets it done. And sure enough, that same team the next year, we ended up getting it done and winning the championship. So, when you really got that camaraderie and that chemistry, it can be magical.
That's awesome. I think that's a great spot to end. Love hearing about success stories. Love talking about what it takes to get there, and sending that message that becoming a great individual player means somebody else has to be great around you, and the more you can lift other guys up, the better you're going to be at the end of the day too. So don't forget about those guys that are on your line, or your D partner, or the backup goalie, or anyone else that's in that system, because you're all there, should be there supporting each other. So Odie, thanks so much, man, for coming on. It was great catching up. Now that I actually know where you are, I'm going to have to come see a game here in Spokane one of these days, and see you in person. But wish you guys nothing but the best, and thanks for giving your time to the program.
My pleasure, Pods. Ton of fun being on this podcast, and keep doing what you do. You're doing a hell of a job.
Appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this conversation with Matt Odette. I really enjoyed it. He had some great one-liners there that I really liked, and I'm sure that you were able to pick up on some awesome takeaways. Again, if you've listened to me at all, you know how passionate I am about building the person behind the hockey player, and building that person behind the hockey player results in better hockey players. I love the correlation. I know that it works. I know that it's there. It sounds like the Seattle Thunderbirds also celebrate that and develop that with their habit trainings days and those types of things. I think that's really the big game changer right now as far as high performance is concerned. There's so much value on the other side of that puck, meaning in the dressing room, and what you are willing to do as a teammate, as an individual with your development, the conversations you're willing to have, whether it be with teammates or with coaches, the connections you're willing to make, the extra things you are willing to do, the understanding of your own body and what it takes to prepare properly, consistently, to play your best. The building of the resiliency and the grit to be able to overcome obstacles and adversities and bad shifts and bad bounces. These things are multipliers. And they are nothing to do, as you've never heard me talk here about skating or your stick handling or your shot. These are amplifiers, right? So these are the things that allow you to push over the edge. And Matt said himself that, boy, I played 2 or 3 or 4 more years just because I learned the intangibles of how to be a good teammate, how to be a good person, how to provide value to an organization outside of what I'm even doing on the ice, So those are lessons that can be learned the earlier, the better, because it will help you get your foot in the door for different places that you want to go. It will also help you stay there longer. And regardless of whether you become a hockey player and you get paid to play this great game, the principles are going to make you a better person in whatever capacity you are serving the community or your family. So super passionate about that. I love that he struck a few nerves with me there when he was talking about what they do as a group and who they look for and what they celebrate, because that's what Up My Hockey is all about. That's what I try to be all about. That's the soapbox that I love to stand on. And yeah, I know there's lots of people out there that do believe in that as well, but sometimes it's hard to put that into action. How do we actually apply this? Words can be words, but how do we get results? How do we embrace that, that culture and that environment? And again, with Matt having like these habit days, these habit training days, like that's a real world application where he is putting something forward that aligns actions with words. And that's a great step forward there for the young men in the Seattle Thunderbirds organization. And I applaud them for doing that. So yeah, I hope you guys took some away here. I always love talking to head coaches, especially ones that used to play, because the perspective changes. And it was really great to talk to Matt about how that transition went and what he looks for now in players. So I'll leave you alone. But until next time, you make sure, play hard and keep your head up.